I'm Sam Roberts of the New York Times, and welcome to the New York Times Close-Up. President Trump declares war on Obamacare again, ordering his Justice Department to join a lawsuit to terminate it, then does an about-face, says the GOP plan to replace it won't come out until after the 2020 election. Meanwhile, Joe Biden facing an uproar after several women accuse him of inappropriate touching. We'll talk about another big week in politics. And did you ever wonder how all the text, photos, colorful charts, and graphics get into the New York Times every day? We'll show you some amazing behind-the-scene photos of the Daily Miracle at the Times' high-tech printing plant in Queens. And later on, I'll have some additional thoughts on CODA. But we begin with a plan to reduce traffic in Manhattan's business district by essentially taxing it. It's called congestion pricing. The state legislature approved the plan this week. It calls for drivers of cars and trucks to pay a fee to drive below 60th Street. The idea is to cut Midtown gridlock and raise money to fix the city's crumbling subway system. We're joined by my Times colleagues, contributing writers Clyde Haberman and Eleanor Randolph. Is this going to work?
Well, you know, there's so many people trying for exemptions at this point. You know, it's going to be the guy on a scooter is the one that's going to have to pay for going south of 60th Street. But, you know, if you look at how London did it, and that's where this all sort of really started, what they did was they allowed taxis and Uber and Lyft to come in without the fee, and they cut the fee if you had an environmentally sound vehicle, and so but pretty much everybody else had to pay extra, and so you know, this committee that's supposed to decide who's going to get in and who's not, and who's going to have to pay and who's not, it'll be at least 2 years, I think, before they figure out how to make this work.
The fact that there is a commission that is going to decide this tells you this ain't happening terribly soon. And you just know that a lot of people are going, more than the Ubers and yellow cabs, are going to demand exemptions. Handicapped folks, you know, folks who have a handicap sticker are going to be in there. I bet you police officers get an exemption. There'll be a bunch of pals who demand exceptions. And, you know, the oldest cliche, the devil's in the details, but it is. And this devil is particularly devilish in many cases. What they have to be sure it can do is A, raise indeed a sufficient amount of money for the MTA, and B, ease congestion, which of course is one purpose. And
make sure the money actually goes to the
right,
MTA.
and that the money actually goes and it doesn't fall off the truck somewhere.
And of course, the more exemptions are granted, the less money will be raised for the MTA. Another exemption that is, I think, in the legislation would be for people who make less than $60,000 get a tax credit. One of the things that amazes me, though, is that this thing actually passed. Mm-hmm. You know, we've got a lot of details to work out. It may not work out as well as people expected or wanted, but this is something we've been talking about for well over a decade. It's now a matter of law. It's a question of working out how it will work, not whether we will have it. Is that not an accomplishment?
Yes,
it is. They did something, yeah. You know, as you've said, they set up a commission, which means you sort of kick this can down the road. But still, just to even agree that there is too much traffic in Manhattan below 60th Street, and that it's gotten to the point that you know, you can barely move. How many miles an hour is it now?
About 4 point something.
4
something ridiculous.
And you know,
something that is equivalent to walking.
That's right. You can almost walk faster. Well, I can't, but you know.
You used to be able to.
Yeah, that's a jogger.
But you know, it's not an accomplishment to be taken for granted. There was this Democratic tsunami, as we know, in the 2018 elections that may not last. And none of this is to be taken lightly. This is a particular moment, and good for them for seizing the moment. But I kind of wish they'd seized the moment with more flesh put on these bare bones.
The fee in London started out, as I recall, at $8.
That's right.
It's now gone up to 15.
About.
It apparently has raised money for transit. Do we have any sense as to whether it's actually eased congestion?
It did,
Yes.
yes. Although there are debates as to whether or not those effects lasted long term. That to some degree, people become inured to whatever the new reality is, and then they go back to their old ways. This is sort of a normal pattern. But I don't think that the initial, I could be wrong on this, but I think, having studied this a bit, that the initial reductions were not maintained entirely, unfortunately. There was slippage.
Eleanor, on the editorial board, things that you were talking about for years, and the Times was in favor of for years, we have made at least incremental, and I would have to say kind of large incremental gains toward public campaign financing, the elimination of cash bail. People who wanted those things didn't get everything they wanted, but it seems they took some fairly big steps in the right direction in this legislative session.
Well, you know, the elimination of cash bail to me was one. I mean, I just stood up and cheered when I heard that they had done this, because really it's a way to punish the poor, and you know,
By having cash bail.
by having cash bail and making, you know, and saying $1,000 for somebody who can barely afford to get to the end of the week, it's just totally unfair. Now they kept bail in case somebody is dangerous or might flee, and so those things are still there. As for campaign finance reform, they didn't quite get there. You know, they're talking about it. They've got some framework. It's another, you know, thing that they're putting off the details for, and we'll just see what they can do.
And I guess we'll see what this new commission will do, although the commission will make its recommendations, and unless the legislature tinkers with them or changes them, they will automatically take effect in December. Will that take effect for the 2019 year, or?
I think so, yes.
Although the elections will be coming in 2020.
Yeah, there are no elections really.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Up next, President Trump's about face on Obamacare and the blowback on Joe Biden's brand of hand-on politics. President Trump reignited his effort to repeal and replace Obamacare, ordering the Justice Department to join a lawsuit to kill the law. But after Majority Leader Mitch McConnell warned him the Senate would not be taking up the issue, the president backtracked, said there'd be no GOP health care plan until after the 2020 election. Meanwhile, presumed presidential candidate Joe Biden facing his own firestorm, several women accusing him of inappropriately touching them. Plenty to talk about. Eleanor Randolph, Clyde Haberman still with us. The president's retreat on health care, how did he go out on a limb on that without realizing the Senate was ill-prepared?
Well, they didn't have a plan. There was no plan there. You know, I think he's set up an easy scare technique for the Democrats, because what they're saying is, we're not going to really tell you what we're going to do to your health care until after 2020. To me, you can almost see the campaign slogans writing themselves because of that. I mean, you know, what are they going to do? There are 29 million people. They're going to just shove them out on the street. It was fascinating to me that the Republicans in the Senate even rose up and said, no, we're not going to do that. That was, you know, this is getting curiouser and curiouser.
Well, you have to feel sorry for the Republicans, because, you know, they do, because collectively they're about as dim-witted as you can get. And they've only had 10 years in which to come up with a plan on their own. So surely if we give them another decade or two, it's like that fake's infrastructure plan. He's been president for nearly 2.5 years now. He's been promising $1 trillion infrastructure thing to repair all our crumbling roads and bridges and the like, and there has been nothing.
Including a wall.
Except, right, the only thing he even talks about is his
There's
wall.
a plaque.
But all the
on
rest is, there's nothing there. They don't really govern. The only true thing they have done, seriously, is the tax cut, which has turned out to benefit a very small sliver of the population and is coming back to bite all sorts of people, and particularly, of course, New Yorkers, because our state and local tax deduction has been eviscerated.
Talking about building something out of proportion, perhaps, tell me about Joe Biden.
Well, you know, he comes from that old school of the old politicians. What they used to say is he doesn't shake your hand, he grabs your arm and looks for broken bones. You know, I mean, it is this very tactile politician. And, you know, you can see how on some level, he's saying, I just love everybody. I want to touch them. I want to hug them. I want to, you know, and the world is different now. I mean, he put out a video that was so bizarre because it was so amateurish, you know. It was done with the camera the wrong way and all that sort of thing. But
like a home movie.
It was even more. It was even cruder than a home movie, but he kept saying, I get it now. So poor guy, he's going to spend, if he runs, he's going to spend the whole time with his arms crossed like that.
Or in his pockets.
You know, it's just a different era, but I don't think, I mean.
Well, should that be disqualifying? When does that become appropriate?
No,
inappropriate.
I don't think it's disqualifying.
We haven't heard anything yet that's disqualifying. At least I don't think so. I mean, he goes up and he kisses the woman on the back of her head.
There's been, you know, there were a fair number of women who were quoted in our articles. Mrs. Carter, the wife of the former defense secretary, saying she understood what he was doing. They were about to have a public appearance, and he was sort of reassuring her. You know, basically, I'm echoing Eleanor on this, but there is a part of me that worries that we're reverting a little bit to the very early stages of the Me Too movement, which is a movement I support, but we know that in the beginning stages of it, everybody got lumped together no matter what the perceived sin was, so that there was no very scant distinctions made between a monster like Harvey Weinstein and an Al Franken. There are a lot of people I know who, for example, will never support Kirsten Gillibrand for what she did to Al Franken. And Joe Biden strikes me as much more in the Al Franken realm than the Bill O'Reilly, Matt Lauer, Harvey Weinstein camp, and just a little perspective wouldn't hurt once in a while.
He's got other problems. I mean, you know,
right.
That he's going to have to deal with, supporting the Iraq War and
how he treated Anita Hill.
Anita Hill
there are
problems.
issues.
So
well,
there are other issues.
With all those problems, people talking about him as a consensus candidate, as a moderate, as the most likely who can beat Donald Trump. How does he win a Democratic primary? How does he win the Democratic nomination, particularly when the party seems to be, at this point, more, if you want to call it progressive, liberal, whatever?
The theory is that the left will divide itself up, you know, it'll chop up all that vote, and that there's this center lane, and that Biden can take it. And I mean, look, people, you know, he's got his problems. Everybody who's been around a long time has problems. Nobody's perfect. But, you know, people really like him and trust him. So, and he is a centrist. He's not, he's not a right-winger, and he's certainly not part of the army on the left.
And he's kind of likable, quite likable, in fact, in many respects. Even the gaffes that a lot of people like to make a big deal out of are in some way winning. But he also has run for president now twice before and has gone nowhere. So it's got to be a part in the back of his brain which wonders, is the airplane I've constructed destined to crash before even leaving the tarmac?
And when you look back, of course, 4 years ago at this point, we were a long way from predicting what would actually happen. either Hillary Clinton was the presumed nominee and president, and Donald Trump was, you know, not even a figment of
And I
anyone's
remember 12 years ago, we all remember 12 years ago, remember President Giuliani?
Mm-hmm. Yep, he was ahead in all the polls,
Yep.
exactly. Thanks to Clyde Haberman, Eleanor Randolph, and coming up next, Stop the Presses. You'll be meeting a remarkable photographer. We're going to give you an inside look at how the New York Times is actually put together and printed. You won't want to miss this. They call it the daily miracle. It's the process that gets all the text, photos, graphics assembled into the New York Times in print every day. The magic happens at the Times printing plant in College Point, Queens. Photographer Christopher Payne went to the plant 40 times, and he's here to share some of his incredible pictures with us. They were in a special section of the New York Times on March 26th, and of course online at nytimes.com. Christopher, this was your idea. You used to deliver newspapers. Why did you have the idea of taking pictures at the Times plant?
Well, I've always been interested in design, assembly, the built form. I have a background in architecture, so I used to work as an architect, and I love learning about how things are made, and I love taking pictures that show how things work. And I used to deliver papers as a kid, and then I did a project about 10 years ago on old printing presses. And I found a press, a newspaper press, that was essentially abandoned, and it still had the last edition in it. And it just planted a seed in my brain. And I've worked a lot with the magazine, and you drive by the huge printing plant on the highway, and I like getting into places that other people have never seen, and being able to tell a story that no one knows about.
This is something to see. It took you 2 years to do that. Why so long?
Well, let's back up a bit. So it took 2 years to get access, and they were concerned about safety, security, and I think how I would portray the plant, and I wanted to celebrate what they're doing and show the printing process while it was still going strong, and it took 40 trips because it's visual chaos, and I've never been in a place that's more challenging to photograph.
What made it so challenging? You've been in a lot of challenging situations as a photographer.
Yes, and I specialize in industrial photography, and I go to a lot of factories, but it's chaotic because there's just a lot going on, and there's a giant mailroom where they have conveyors and sorters and things and lots of people, and it's always messy. And the press room is loud, and the presses are large, and you can climb all over them. And you never know what that day's edition is going to look like. So often I would arrive with a plan in my head. I'm going to get this shot. This is going to be the one I'm going to get today. They're printing the travel section, or they're printing arts and drama. And I'd get there, and for whatever reason, the units would be configured in a certain way. The papers would be moving through certain rollers. It would just look different than what I had expected. And also the colors for every day, they change. So one edition, 1 week might look great, very colorful, very photogenic. The next week it might be heavy on the blacks or the grays or the browns.
Sure. If I remember my numbers right, there are about 1.7 million copies that are printed there every week. 25 other plants, the Times is printed around the United States. And the presses, each of them turn out about 80,000 papers an hour. And I just remember visiting there, and some people say they are platform agnostic. They don't really care where their articles appear. I do. I grew up with print, and I like my articles appearing anywhere, but somehow you go out and see those presses running, and it reminds you why you went into journalism.
Exactly.
There's just something powerful, romantic about that looking at a two-dimensional screen doesn't have the same effect.
No, and what was funny is to see when they printed my section. So I got to see my photographs printed much larger than I'd seen on the screen. And the ones that we printed large had kind of a new effect on me. It's like I'd never seen them before, and I appreciated them on a whole other level. And it was also interesting and touching to see the pressmen printing photos of themselves and getting kind of their reactions. You know, most of the time they're, you know, just kind of nonchalant about everything, but I could tell that they were appreciative.
The special section came with a essay by Luc Sant. One of the things he pointed out is that online you sort of compose your own newspaper with various algorithms of what you're looking for, but in print you wind up becoming absorbed in stories that no mathematical formula would have selected. In addition to which, of course, a newspaper, unlike an online version, has lots of other functions, proverbially wrapping fish and all sorts of other things. What did you learn about the process that you didn't expect to or didn't know before?
I learned that it was a lot more difficult to photograph than I anticipated. I think I walked in there the first day and I said, this is going to be great. And then after a few visits, I realized this is going to be very difficult to get to hone in on those moments that are truly about this place, truly essential to the newspaper printing process. So I learned that. What also continually amazed me was how the people who work there inhabit these machines. They're so big that to get them running, they have to feed, they have to manually pull paper up through the rollers, up through the units. And if something breaks, they got to climb up there and do it all over again. Yep. And here they've perfected this technology of printing thousands of papers an hour at high speed with the utmost precision. And it's all computerized, that the plates are made digitally with lasers. And yet, you still have the human hand is still required to make all of this work.
And it is a daily miracle, and you can see it thanks to Christopher Payne in the New York Times. I'll add my thoughts on CODA next. Robert F. Wagner's private gospel for governing New York was discovered only after he died. Today, when the world seems so much more complex, the former mayor's credo seems refreshingly uncomplicated. When in danger, ponder, Wagner said. When in trouble, delegate. When in doubt, mumble. Wagner rarely pondered in public. He was, however, known to mumble aloud when it suited his purpose. His famously ambiguous remarks made it more difficult to hold him accountable. The former mayor's personal style of leadership more often visibly manifested itself in delegating, and the way Wagner typically delegated was to create a commission. It's by no means a scientific measure, but if you look up Wagner and mayor and commission in the New York Times online index, you'll find 1,430 references. This week, the state legislature did what it was supposed to do, which was pass a budget on time, by Albany time, since the voting was actually a few hours late. Lawmakers were highly motivated. If they failed to meet the April 1st deadline, they would have forfeited a $10,000 annual raise. The raise was recommended last December by a special commission. It was created by the legislature under the Wagner rule to absolve elected lawmakers of guilt for granting themselves a pay increase. They delegated the responsibility or the blame to someone else. Whether they had the legal right to do so is now being challenged in court. As part of the budget deal this week, the governor and legislature punted on two other hot potatoes. How? They delegated. Because they couldn't agree by the deadline, they created commissions. One will propose a way to begin public campaign financing in New York. Which candidates and parties for which offices will be eligible? How much in private contributions will be matched? Will the formula take local campaign costs into account? The other commission is blandly called the Traffic Mobility Review Board. It will identify the devil in the details of congestion pricing. Who will be charged to enter Manhattan in what kind of vehicle? How much? When? Who driving south of 60th Street or living there will be exempt or be charged a reduced rate? The governor originally planned to let an MTA agency deal with all that, but once he acknowledged that he controls the authority, why not pass the buck and give the commission plenty of time to make up its mind until after the 2020 state elections? This week, Mayor de Blasio bequeathed a quandary to a commission too: how to fix the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway. I guess delegating is a form of leading. The political scientist James McGregor Burns defined leadership much like Mayor Wagner did, but the professor offered a loftier explication. The hallmark of most leaders in most cultures is not uncontrollable ambition or irrational, immoral, or aggressive behavior, Burns said, but prudence, calculation, and management. For the New York Times and CUNY TV, I'm Sam Roberts.